Resident Evil's approach to horror has always been quite unique. Where other modern horror games don't give you chances to fight back, in Resident Evil you are able to knife, shoot, roundhouse kick, and in many other ways take down enemies. Resident Evil still isn't just a shooter with horror elements like other games like Fear or Dead Space. Instead, the series' horror is built from bullet sponge enemies and very small amounts of ammo and resources to fight them with. Theoretically, the player can take down all enemies in the game, but the player won't have enough ammo to do so, and wasting the ammo on normal enemies means you might run out while fighting a boss. Thus, the challenge of Resident Evil is created from meaningful decision making at all points of gameplay. Resident Evil VIII uses this formula as well, though ammo is much more plentiful than in other games in the series. On my first playthrough, I fought most of the enemies I came across and never ran out of ammo. This might be different in high difficulties as I played the game on standard. Not running out of resources is due to the addition of a merchant from whom the player can buy ammo and the crafting system. If in need, the player can craft more ammo on the fly. This isn't the first Resident Evil that features a merchant, but I haven't played Resident Evil 4, so I can't say much on that. The crafting components are very plentiful, and usually when you are in need of crafting, you have components to do so. However, all of this is put aside in the scariest level of the game. Resident Evil VIII Village is separated into 6 main levels: the Introduction, Castle Dimitrescu, House Beneviento, the Reservoir, Heisenberg's Factory, and the Finale. In this video I will discuss the second main level, House Beneviento. This video will contain full spoilers for the entire level, so if you haven't played the game and you want to be scared shitless, I recommend you do that before watching this video. In the video I will go through how the level works in detail and discuss the themes of the level. House Beneviento is the second main level of the game. You are granted access to the level after clearing Castle Dimitrescu, and after Duke, the merchant, tells Ethan about the 4 lords and the little flask his baby is in. Lovely. You find the feathers to stick into the key to create the 4-winged key, and the path to the level is open to you. The usual level design in a Resident Evil game takes place in a large interconnected map, usually a building. The player enters the level and finds items to open doors and pathways throughout the level. This design is present in Resident Evil VIII, but is much more low-key, it being most prominent in the first level, Castle Dimitrescu. The challenge is basically running around the house, finding keys, opening doors to find more keys, and all the while you are hunted by zombies and or a very tall vampire lady. This design exists in House Beneviento too, but very mildly. For this essay, I mapped out the level very simply into a graph. As you can see, it is a simple straight line. There isn't much you can do out of order. The challenge of this level is not finding zombies, checking rooms, finding keys, and being impaled by a very tall vampire lady. At the end of the day, this level is not particularly challenging at all. Instead, this level is about atmosphere. Atmosphere is not new to Resident Evil, but focusing an entire level around it is something the series does quite rarely. After opening the gate with the 4-winged key, you enter a foggy forest filled with hanged dolls and doll parts. There is a trolley filled with doll parts, and this kind of Parenthood imagery is present throughout the entire level. The player has to cross a suspension bridge that likes to wobble, all the while the player has no idea what to expect. The air is filled with suspense, and further in, you see Mia, Ethan's wife, holding Rose, their daughter. We know that the baby has been split into 4 pieces, so the player knows that something is wrong here. Not even mentioning that Mia is dead. Mia appears a few times in the forest on the way to the house, saying things that I will go through at a later section of this video. The player comes across a door that opens if you give up your memories. The game subverts the player's expectations by making an item the player has had since the beginning of the game a key. The picture of Ethan's family has been a reminder of what the player is trying to achieve: save Rose and avenge Mia. The player enters an elevator inside a cave. Why is there an elevator in a cave? Most likely because it is a loading screen. However, there is a scare in this elevator. The lights are suddenly turned off, and when the lights come back, the words, "Come with me, Ethan," are written into the wall. Clearly someone or something is trying to persuade him further into the house. Exiting the elevator, the house is revealed and it seems very homey, not overly fancy like the castle earlier, but not unpleasant like the houses in the village. The main part of the level does take place inside a single house, but all the doors are already open and there isn't a single enemy in sight. There is no need to find any keys or plan any routes. There is one locked door, but its job is just to lead the player through the house instead of just skipping to the elevator. The trek through the house is very interesting. Walking through, I had a sensation that this house was truly lived in, and that is a rare feeling to get in a video game. The house seems very homey, the colors are warm, but the air is filled with the ambiance of creaking wood. Though the house is very pleasant and warm, something feels off. It's empty, not a person in sight. What catches the player's interest when entering is a huge portrait of Donna and the creepy doll Angie, the one Ethan met earlier when all the baddies were introduced. Donna in the painting has the Mona Lisa effect. The eyes follow you wherever you stand, as if she's watching you, and she most likely is. In the dining room there is a single doll on a shelf, and since the player has seen a bunch of dolls earlier, one would expect more dolls to be littered around the house. But no, there's just this single one. The only way forward is an elevator in the back, which also begs the question, what is an elevator doing in a house like this? The elevator takes the players to the underground section of this level. The hallways underground are far less homey. The halls are long and dark and do not seem like something people would have in their homes. Getting closer to the end of the hallway, music starts playing. You enter a room with multiple hanged doll pieces and a chair, on which sits Angie with a yellow flask, the one Ethan is in here for. It is a trap, and the player knows it, but the player also knows that there is no other choice than to take the bait. Ethan grabs the flask, Angie awakens, the lights go out. When the lights come back on, the room has changed slightly, and Ethan has lost all his weapons and items, and the player realizes what kind of horror is going to come. This is no longer an usual Resident Evil level. This is something more akin to Outlast, Amnesia, or PT. And the level actually has taken a lot of inspiration from PT, and if you're interested in hearing more on that, you should watch this video. You are not fighting back against whatever is about to attack you. You are going to run, or you are going to hide. The duration of the entire level is spent in expectation of what's coming, or whether anything is coming at all, since for most of the level there are no threats to the player whatsoever. And so begins the puzzle. On the operating table in the middle of the room appears a doll, firmly in the uncanny valley. Also in the room there is a save point, telling you that this room is a safe place, which takes some of the edge off from the situation. There are 3 locked doors in the room. The way you came in is locked with a dial lock, and 2 other doors which both need new items to open. The central puzzle of this level is taking apart the doll lying on the table, which appears to be a replica of Mia, Ethan's deceased wife. There is a picture on the table next to the doll that implies this. In the picture, Mia has a gunshot wound in her chest, much like the doll. Taking the doll apart, however, isn't much of a puzzle, but a task of walking around the table hoping to see that interaction button, pressing it and seeing what happens. At this point, you get 3 items out of the doll: the silver key, the blood-covered ring, and the winding key. Taking apart the doll activates some voice lines from Mia coming from the radio, but these I will analyze in the later section of the video. The silver key opens the door to the next room, where you can use the sink to wash the blood off the ring, which turns out to be Mia's wedding ring. Examining it reveals the code needed to open the dial lock on the door the player came from. The hallways are now filled with even more unsettling ambiance. The hallway has many corners, which makes the player anticipate something behind every turn, ready to jump at the player, much like in PT. However, there are no scares yet, just the anticipation. The game is being very patient with the player in this level by holding on to the anticipation of shit going down, instead of just blowing up against the player's face with constant threats and scares. This patience is very welcome here, as earlier the game has been quite happy to throw enemies at the player and call it a day. On your way through the hallway, a door that had previously been closed opens right in front of you, inviting you in. Inside this room you can unlock a simple puzzle with the winding key. You must rearrange these pieces of a music box according to the damages the pieces have taken. Inside the music box you find tweezers, a very ordinary thing to put inside your wedding present, I guess. Maybe it is, I don't know, I'm not married. With the tweezers the player can extract a piece of film from the Mia doll's mouth. Going back to the study at the beginning of the underground section, you can do another puzzle in which you must rearrange the pieces of film into the correct order according to a note on the table. The 2 puzzles are quite similar and both very simple, the focus not being on the difficulty but on the question of why are pieces of Ethan and Mia's life in this house. Once the films are in the correct order, the projector plays something very different from the pieces of film you were handling. Someone passing an empty grip and going down a well. After the show, the whiteboard on the wall falls over and a bookshelf moves to reveal a passage inside the wall, a passage full of dolls that have been watching inside the walls all along. Luckily, one is holding scissors, and you can finally cut open the binding covering the doll's chest. Returning to the operating room, you find the brass medallion inside the doll's breast, and you can open the last door in the operating room, and you venture into the shadows. After a long and dark hallway, you find the place you saw in the film. The grip is ringing softly, and the player knows, I have to go down the fucking well, don't I? You do? And you find the breaker box key, your key to powering the elevator and leaving the underground section of the house. The game seems to be done waiting and you hear a loud crash. Coming up the ladder, you find the grip broken and the sounds of a baby crying just got louder. Returning to the operating room, the Mia doll is gone, and leaving the room you see a bloody umbilical cord winding down into the hallway to the direction you know you must go. You follow it. It's leading to the elevator, your way out. All this time, running up and down the hallway, there has been no threats, but all this time the player has been waiting, getting tenser and tenser, knowing that something is about to hit them in the face. And finally, that tension is released. You run away from the baby, who is quite slow and doesn't really prove to be a real threat. But looking at my reaction and other players' reactions, it does not need to be terrifying. The sounds it makes are horrid and unsettling, gurgling and gibberish. Sounds that are normally cute and lovely are twisted into something horrendous. Luckily the player knows another way through the map to the breaker box, and inside you find a relief of a baby, but you need a fuse to turn on the elevator. There is no escape yet. The relief opens the door to the bedroom, next to which lies Angie. There is nothing the player can do about the door now. It is lying there, perhaps to remind the player about the actual enemy of this level, and or settling the player into not wanting to step a foot in this room. The bedroom is quite nice, but the question is, why is the room down here in this weird collection of long hallways? In the bedroom you find the fuse you need, and you are ready to escape. You begin to make your way back to the elevator, and you are once again surprised by the baby. You turn to run and hide under the bed, knowing what you must do. Seeing the baby up close is even more terrifying. The player is filled with dread. All it takes is for it to look down. You must wait until it has circled to the other side of the bed, and you must run. You plan the quickest route to the elevator, but the baby has turned over herself to cover the path, and you must change your plan on the fly, taking the long way. Finally you make your way there, and you turn on the elevator, but the baby is back. You are hammering the button for the door to open, but the animation is so slow you have to hide in the study. Here you have to make a run for it, and just barely you make it into the elevator and leave as the monstrous baby stays behind, screaming at you through the grate. You survived. Returning to the house that was eerily empty earlier, you find dolls everywhere. Donna stops you, saying,
"Don't leave. I can't let you."
And the dolls attack you. Personally, I found the dolls to be more unsettling before I saw them flying around with these comical blades, but I'm not going to lie, the dolls are creepy as hell. What commands us is a very unsettling boss fight, where you must find Angie from among all the dolls. The sounds are horrible, and the dolls do this twitching thing that makes me feel so horrible, it's horrid. However, getting the footage, I wanted to see what happens if you fail, and I had to wait ages for the dolls to attack me, and it wasn't even an insta-kill. The atmosphere is really unsettling, but the challenge isn't all that hard, and I believe this is by design. You run through the house, you find Angie and stab it in the head 3 times, and you win. The focus of this entire level is to be unsettling and scary, not to be a challenge. It is revealed that instead of Angie you stab Donna, and in her corpse you find a new piece for the 4-winged key, and from the floor rises a pedestal on which you get the rose flask you came for, and you leave. Congratulations, you did it. There is a distinct theme of parenthood throughout the entire game. The main conflict of the story is Ethan trying to save his daughter from Mother Miranda, who wants to turn Rose into her lost daughter. The 4 baddies you go through in the game are basically Mother Miranda's children, and they and their levels explore different aspects of parenthood. Castle Dimitrescu explores a certain toxic parenthood, much akin to the evil stepmother from Cinderella. The 3rd level explores unrequited love from the child toward their parent. The enemy of this level, Moreau, is sad that Mother Miranda does not love him, and he would do anything to achieve that love. The 4th level, Heisenberg's Factory, explores rebellion against one's parent. Heisenberg never asked to become an immortal super zombie, and he is going to use his power to kill her, the one who doomed him to his fate. The 2nd level, House Beneviento, the one I have analyzed for this video, explores the parent's fear of parenthood itself. At this point I have to mention that I am not a parent myself, so all these theories do not come from experience, but from what I imagine parenthood is like. As mentioned earlier, a hallucination of Mia appears many times during this level. Most of the times when she appears she says something to Ethan, and now I want to go through what it is she is trying to convey. In the forest, Mia appears saying,
"Ethan, you have to fix her."
This is a reference to the fear parents can feel if there is something wrong with their child. For example, an illness. The parent takes all the pressure on their own shoulders to fix something that might not be fixable, at least not for just a single person.
I don't want to be alone.
The parent often can feel alone in taking care of and raising their child, having all that pressure compiled on a single person. What Donna is trying to convey to Ethan through Mia is that maybe there was something going on behind the scenes with Rose that Mia never told Ethan about. Mia's voice plays in the radio in the operating room a few times. In the first instance, everything seems to be going well.
Whoa, that's a kid. Can you believe it? She's so energetic. It's crazy.
The baby is kicking and the parent's mind is full of hope and happiness. This is before the fear kicks in. Next time, that happiness is gone.
Oh God, no. I can't do anything but this.
Something seems to be wrong with the child, and the mother is deciding to take all the pressure on herself and hide it from the father. The pressure is too much to handle for just one person. The pressure drives the mother into doing something drastic.
I didn't want to lose you again. I didn't want to destroy this family.
Mia, what are you talking about?
I love you both so much. I had to do it.
We do not know what this drastic thing that Mia supposedly did was, but she seems to be feeling some level of remorse about it, trying to convince herself that she had no choice. At one point, returning to the operating room, we can see Mia running away from us behind the window. The player follows her, trying to figure out what is going on. Mia is literally running away from Ethan, not telling him what is wrong with Rose and what she is doing. Next, the player hears Mia crying over Rose, completely hopeless. Perhaps what Mia tried to do to help Rose did not work, or she is overcome with regret, or something else is clearly wrong. Once the Mia doll has disappeared and the house is in darkness, the player can hear Mia bargaining.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Over and over again. She is trying to convince herself that everything will be figured out. All these glimpses of his wife and child are driving Ethan further and further into doubt regarding Rose. Perhaps something is wrong with Rose, and the fear of parenthood that has completely taken over Mia extends over to Ethan too. Katie O'Hagan's brilliant voice work with Mia sells all these emotions well, even if the overall writing of the game can be a tad dry.
Why is everyone dying on me?
Once the fear of being a parent reaches Ethan, this fear is physically depicted in the baby monster. The parent is literally running away from their child, scared shitless. The baby even says, proving that this beast is a depiction of Rose. The game twists this fear that usually comes out as anxiety and or depression into immediate fear for one's life. Though the sounds the baby is making are usually seen as cute or endearing, the player does not want to be the target of this beast's affection. At one point, the player has to hide under a bed from the baby, a hiding place that is stereotypically associated with a boogeyman. Perhaps the parent sees themselves as the boogeyman, about to ruin their child's life. This unsurmountable challenge of parenthood is turned into a grotesque monster that wants to eat the parent up whole. Much like such high level of anxiety swallows the parent's entire life, every single aspect of it. Every single situation in the parent's life is filled with horrifying dread of somehow failing their job at raising the child. Even the smallest mistake is the end of the line. There are no second chances. In my first reading of the enemies of this level, Donna and Angie, I read them as different characters, but the Resident Evil wiki tells that Donna speaks through Angie, so all the lines from the doll are Donna actually speaking. This is an interesting reading, and I cannot factually say which one is right or better. The first thing Angie says to the player is,
I'd make a much better daughter than Rose. Please, won't you stay with me forever?
for some reason Donna cannot let Ethan leave. She even says so in her only line in the game.
Don't leave. I can't let you.
In the boss fight against Angie, the doll says many unsettling things, but the first thing it lets out of its mouth is the most telling.
Everything would be better if Rose wasn't born.
Fucking monster.
This plays into the fear of parenthood, a thought that might pop up in the mind of a parent and can cause absolute horror in them. It would seem that Angie wants to make a dad of Ethan. I have a theory for this, so bear with me. On the way to the level, the player passes a huge grave dedicated to someone whose name cannot be made out yet, since a part of the stone slab is missing. After finishing the level, the door in the graveyard in the village opens and you find the missing part. Turns out, The name is Claudia, a child who was born in 1987 and died in 1996 at the age of 9. I believe this could be Donna's child who sadly passed away, and in her attempt to replace the child she created the doll Angie. And together with Angie, Donna tries to make Ethan stay in the Beneviento's house as Angie's father. I'm not sure if this theory holds, since I don't know absolutely everything, and I would love to hear what you think about it. And Donna also has the need to get rid of Ethan for Mother Miranda, so making Ethan stay would kill two birds with one stone. She might also want to kill Ethan's conviction to save Rose and make him end his quest. At the end of the day, this level is not quite hard, but that is intentional. The challenge is not the focus of this level, instead the atmosphere of horror is. The player has no access to their arsenal and thus cannot fight back. All the player can do is run away and hide in closets. The baby is terrifying and loud, but quite slow, so with some thinking and planning it is easy to survive. But even when I was recording material for this level and I knew what was coming, I was still shitting myself when the baby finally slammed on the floor and started crawling towards me. There's also much focus on the theme of this level, instead of just giving the enemy a motive tied to the theme. The entire level is built around the theme, the fear of parenthood, the fear of screwing up raising your child. I wonder if the level would have hit harder if I was a parent. This is clearly a well-crafted level, and there is no doubt in my mind when I say this. This is one of the best horror levels I have played. What do you think? This was my first video, so I'm sorry if I'm a bit rusty at this. I'm not really sure how to edit one of these, so if the video seems a bit off, it's because I am new to this. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again. And be sure to write down your own theories in the comments. I'd love to read them.